Welcome to Full Incarnations. This podcast is part of the journey towards the EUROTAS 2026 Symposium in Portugal. Here, we open conversations on birth, consciousness, and healing, exploring how the very first moments of life shape who we become and how reclaiming those beginnings can transform our future. We are so glad you're here. Let's begin. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Full Incarnations, the podcast of the EUROTAS 2026 Symposium, Happy Babies Full Incarnations. I am Rita, and today I'm sitting here with Andreas Rodenkirchen, a multidisciplinary healing hearts practitioner based in Sweden. He's core faculty at Grof Legacy Training Nordic and someone who has been accompanying people through some of the most profound and inner journeys imaginable. Hi, Andreas. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing great. It's a sunny day, and it's starting to be spring here in Stockholm. So it's that in itself is amazing, and I'm very happy to be here and talk about these important things.
Yeah, it's a lovely day here in Portugal as well.
Yeah.
And it's a pleasure to be talking with you about what you guys are bringing to the symposium. Andreas, I'd love to start off with you telling me a little bit more about what brought you here. What pulled you towards this territory of breath, consciousness, and deeper layers of the psyche?
Yeah. And I just have one question for you before that.
Okay.
How you said fully incarnated. So
Yeah.
right now, Rita, how incarnated do you feel right now?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a terrific question. Not completely full, if I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah.
I love honesty. So on a percentage scale, if you just guess from the top of your head, how incarnated in this moment are you?
I would say a 6. Yeah. I would say a 6.
Yeah. So I think to start off with something, I think that's because that you have that as a headline. I think that's a really beautiful thing to talk about, being incarnated and what does it mean. I won't go into it in depth, but I would say that all of us have the longing to be fully incarnated, to let our being be fully entered in our doing, and to show ourselves not in a show-off way, but in a transparent way to the world. So that's our deepest longing. And my fantasy is that for most of us, it's also the deepest fear.
Yeah.
Because if we really show ourselves, will we be loved and accepted? And what do we carry that has told us that maybe that's not the case?
It's funny that you bring this. It's funny that you bring this question, because the other day I was walking in nature and I was thinking about what it meant for me. Full incarnation. What does this mean to me? And what came up to me was that being fully incarnated was to inhabit body, but also to be aware of your mental part and also your spiritual part. So it's kind of like an integration. I saw it like as the Three Musketeers, that was what came to me. And it was like an integration and a conversation between these three parts. And when I thought about it, is that we often forget one of the parts, or one of the
and that's so true. And I think that two things are that comes out in me when you say this is like, one of the things is this thing about energy, because basically we're dealing with energy. And I don't mean like, oh, we're dealing with energy. I mean, like, if you look at the person and if you look at the body and the difference between a body and a corpse.
Yeah.
And if you ever sat with somebody who died or who is dying, you see the immediate difference between the body and the corpse. And, just phenomenologically, what has happened, because one second this person is warm, it's breathing, there's something in the eyes, there's maybe not in the death when you're dying, but there's an ability to digest things and so on. And the next second, it's gone, and it's starting to get cold. There's nobody there in the eyes. This energy is gone. So I think on all these levels, the three musketeers you're speaking about, there is this, and we have names for it. We say depression and expression. And depression means holding back, pushing down. And expression means letting out. So it's about letting things through, maybe, rather than letting things out, or letting things out, expressing on all these levels. And also to be aware that there might be some perspectives that we don't yet know. So the three musketeers, D'Artagnan shows up and they become the four musketeers. So it's also being aware that there might be a fourth musketeer that I haven't thought about. And there's also synergetic effects between these things. So going back to your initial question, what brought me to this is many things that coincide, it's this longing to be fully incarnated and to help others fully incarnate. And to me, one of the avenues that led me there was working in dramatic arts and with music and dramatic arts, and to find expression and to find whatever takes you outside your comfort zone in a healthy way, whatever opens something new. So that first brought me to Gestalt therapy, which I studied. But I was always on the lookout for, what can I have in my toolbox that are the best tools, that are the best perspectives, that are the best practices, or whatever you might call them. Because, of course, in some way, it's not about the finger pointing, it's about the moon. As in the old koan, you don't need a finger to see the moon, but the finger can surely help you to find where the moon is. So, but in this journey, I was given, many years ago, I was given as a birthday present to do holotropic breathwork. Because this person that was very dear to me, who gave this birthday present to me, said to a man who knew a lot about different methods and psychology and whatnot, that, okay, so Andreas is, he's doing all this, he knows all this, what could you give him that's really profound and deep and like shift things around? And then he said holotropic breathwork. And so I did a session, a one-on-one session, actually. Most times you do it in groups. And to me, it was like an opening that was, it was like mind expanding, blowing. And also, after the session, I had this synchronicities, these events happening in my life that confirmed what I've experienced during the breathwork. And that was like, I was like, I need to know more about this. And that brought me on the path to the transpersonal. And then that brought me to a lot of things in this realm, in the transpersonal realm. And breathing and medicine work combined with, physical work like bioenergetics and other techniques like qigong and whatnot, and breathing and yoga that I've done prior, but not like a mishmash, but see how they interact, how they help to open this precious instrument that we all have, that is our mind and our body, to express and be as fully incarnated as we can in every moment.
In many people in the transpersonal field will know about holotropic breathwork and Stanislav Grof, but we also have a lot of people that are new to this. And could you explain a little bit more what is holotropic breathwork for those newcomers?
Yeah, of course. It's really, really simple. So in a very safe setting, with a bit of preparation, because you just get some information, you do medical screening and things like that, just to make sure and just to check, then it's like you are paired up, so there's one sitter and one breather. You lie down on a mat, you wear eye shades, there will be music, which is wonderful, and you breathe. And it's not about, breathing technique, it's about breathing deeper and faster, and the music helps you. And the music is put together in such a way that it will help you through the journey. It won't control you. The music is not there to control you, but it's like the first part of the music is like, going up. I love skiing. So if you go up in the cabin to the hill, that's what's happening in the first part. So at first, it's a bit of an effort to breathe. But when, what's so beautiful, and we might talk more about breathing later, but what's so beautiful with breathing is that you can control it and it happens by itself. So it works in both ways. So you start by deepening the breathing, like, or however you want to breathe, through the nose, through the mouth. And then at some point, the breathing will breathe you. So you get into this circular rhythm of breathing, and the music helps you. And you go with the breathing, and the breathing does things chemically to you. And we don't need to go into the details, but it opens up your consciousness, and it takes away a lot of filters. And it activates what we in the Grof Legacy call the inner healer, which is the intelligence we all have inside. And why it's called holotropic, it's also called Grof Breathwork today, but why it's called holotropic is because holos means whole and tropin means moving towards. So this intelligence moves us towards wholeness and takes us wherever we need to go. So, and to your help, you have the sitter who is there for you with a relaxed attention. The sitter is not doing anything to you. The sitter is there if you need help and is there to witness. So the trick of the sitter is to be present without doing, as they say, in Taoism, doing by not doing, or really doing without the doer. So it's not your need to do something to the person. It is the sitter also responding to what's needed from this inner healer to complete whatever needs to be completed to be whole. And this experience can take you many places. It can be very physical and somatic. It can be very still. It can be a lot of visions. It can take you into, universal bliss, or very painful things, traumas, that need to be worked through, but you're doing it in a safe environment. And there's people there for you who can help you if you need. But it's also about trusting that the inner healer can also do the work.
Sounds like sorry, go on.
Yeah, no.
It sounded like the sitter role was more important than just you can perceive at first.
The sitter role is extremely important. And the thing is that many people have just as profound experiences being sitters from another perspective, to be able to be there for another human being. And I always quote a guy called Louis Lavelle, because I say like this: no true healing happens outside of love. And Louis Lavelle has written, love is the pure attention to the existence of the other. Love is the pure attention to the existence of the other. So the sitter is there with pure attention, not forcing the attention, ready to not do or to do whatever's needed, And that is like, that's a fantastic experience to be able to do that. And a lot of things happen to you when you do that. And you're also in this field, especially if you work in a group, but also one-on-one, but especially in a group, where we conduct these things, then you're in this field that's happening around you. So you're also in the process, but it's not mainly about your process. You're there in service to the other person. And what's so beautiful, then you shift the roles. So the breather becomes the sitter, and the sitter becomes the breather.
Yeah.
So there's something about that, like the philosopher Martin Buber, he talks about I and thou. And I mean, thou is just a higher way of saying you. But he says that when I say thou, or when I say you, I become I, because we don't exist in isolation. We exist in relation. And that's also why true healing only happens in relation to somebody, with a witness. We need a witness. I often tell, if I work with clients, like in variations of Gestalt or whatever, I say that, if you cry in your own room, in your own bedroom, it relieves things a bit, There's a relief in that. But if you cry together with somebody else who's there and present, it heals.
Yeah. You were saying that often the sitter also has experiences. Could you share with us a profound experience that touched you as a sitter?
Yeah. and of course I have to be a bit careful because this is confidential what happens in the room, but I can give an example that has happened in variations at times. But you know, there's you can be in these states, you can be in bliss, you can be experiencing a trauma, you can often when you go through the trauma you will experience bliss in the other end of the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
But there's mainly two types of traumas that happens in our life, and that's trauma by omission or commission. And trauma by omission can be when you were left alone when you weren't supposed to be alone, as a child, for instance, going through
Mm-hmm.
pain and there was nobody there for you. So as a sitter, like extremely beautiful moments I have experienced are when there's a person who, is going into a trauma like that. Maybe a person, like in this one instance, there was this person I know have a really hard time reaching out and asking for help. And because the contract is, I'm not doing anything if I'm not asked to, and asked is not by the mouth. Usually it's by, a sign or somebody who shows something. And when that person, and I could see the person was tightening up, struggling, going through pain, but holding. And then all of a sudden the person realized I can reach out,
Yeah.
and reaches his hand like this. And that's a clear sign for me, but I'm still moving in slowly. So I just put my hand here so the warmth can be felt and see what happens. If he pulls away, I will go away, But then he takes my hand, and grasps it and holds it. And then there's like tears, so there's this release of this pain.
Mm.
And then there's like crying and crying and crying. And the person, crawls closer to me so I could put a hand on the other shoulder, just, and always with a question, like checking if it's okay. Is he repelling or but I feel he's softening, lightening up. So I'm holding this person, and that person is like releasing, feeling the contact, feeling safe, being able to release. And then after crying for quite some time, there's this like bliss, and the person can let go and start, and the music is there, and the body starts dancing on the mat,
Mm-hmm.
and like stretching out its arms, and I know from the sharing that was going into like a universal bliss and a cosmic dance, and that's such a important reminder that there's two types of pain, there's two types of fear. One is the fear or the pain that we need to listen to. I put my hand on a hot stove, so I need to pull it away, If I don't have that
Mm-hmm.
reflex, then I'm going to really hurt myself. But then there's another kind of pain that I need to go through. And on the other end of that pain, there's an opening. Or the fear, Because if I never confront my fear, if I'm never out of my comfort zone, there's no expansion, there's no growth. But it needs to be treated with care, because it's not about just exposing yourself to painful things, because
Mm-hmm.
then that becomes some sort of re-traumatization or some you're scared of heights, so you immediately go and do a skydive. It might work for some people, but for some people it would just be like awful. So, but because this, when you breathe, it comes from the inner healer. You can trust the
Mm-hmm.
process.
Do you think that is why breathing is such a good door into the unconscious, and specifically tying it with the symposium team uh, to access these early memories, the pre and perinatal memories?
Yes, yes. You know, breath is so connected. We could talk about breath for hours, but if we just look at this in this way, breath is so connected to emotions, memories, and energy going through us.
Mm-hmm.
Because what happens when we get scared, we do,
Yeah.
and we hold the breath. And if I feel stressed or not at ease in a situation, or I don't feel I belong, or there's something threatening me, I breathe shallowly.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm crying, I'm going to breathe like this. So the breathing is affected by emotions, but emotions are affected by breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And to access to fully incarnate, but also to access um, our body and what's stored in the body fully. If we breathe fully, we can access that. And personal question, but have you given birth to a child?
Yes, I have, but it was a C-section. It was a
Yeah,
normal birth.
yeah. So I'm also taken by C-section. So the children become brilliant, so you can rest at ease.
Thank you.
Um, but there are some things we C-section children need to trust, and that's the journey through the birth canal. But that we can speak about later. But I'm because also in giving birth this way, not the C-section, but then you have the prophylactic breathing,
Mhm.
that helps move, that helps give birth. So it's like, and just in pain relief breathing. And also, if you ever sat with a person who's dying, they have this, depending on how they die, of course, but if you sit in a hospital, they quite often have these breathing things in the end, where it's uh, like this breathing out, and then you think, oh, now the person has died, but then it's like it comes back, and then, but all of a sudden, it's the last breath.
Mm.
So somehow we're breathing into life and we're breathing out of this life, out of this incarnation. And so breathing, if you don't breathe fully, you don't have full access. And if I work with actors or singers, if they're on stage and they get nervous, then they tense up. And then I often say, this instrument is like a Stradivarius. It's like this wonderful, wonderful violin. And it's wonderful because, the strings are there, and this
Mhm.
wooden box is really made in the right way, of this right wood and everything. But what happens when I do this with the strings is the vibrations makes a resonance in this box, and then it comes out beautifully. But if I would put plaster on this, or put gravy in the hole, then the vibrations don't get through. So when we tense up, the vibrations don't get through. And what we have done with the pains we carry is that we have built, muscular tensions that keep these things encapsulated, that keep this energy encapsulated in our body, that keeps the trauma there to protect us. And one of the first people in modern times, there are so many ancient techniques, but in modern times was Wilhelm Reich, who talked about body armoring and so on, because he could see this in the work. And a key to unlocking this, one of the most important keys, is to breathe fully. And breath is also connected to spirit, respiration, spirit. Uh,
Mhm.
I even heard, right now I don't remember the roots of it. I'm very interested in words at times, the root from spirituality comes from the word breathing. So it's really about breath. And in Swedish, we have this word for breath called andedräkt. And ande means spirit, and dräkt means clothing. So we call it the clothing of the spirit.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yes. And it's also, if you look at breathing, like you breathe in now and breathe out, it's what connects me, my inner world, to the outer world. So it's this constant connection. So if I disrupt the breathing or hold the breath, then I cut off the connection between the inner and the outer world.
So for example, if you're someone who's struggling to fully incarnate, you would have a shallower breathing, right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
So you can just look at situations like when you're uncertain of yourself, if you don't know if you're welcome, if you don't know if you're doing all right, if you're watching yourself from the outside, most certainly you will have a more shallow breathing. And as I started with the example of the actors and singers, I always tell them, check 3 things. Check your feet against the floor, like really feel your feet against the floor. That's the grounding. And see that you don't overstretch your knees. And then next thing is breathing. So grounding, breathing, and then direction, if you're acting or singing. Just bring it into a direction, and then you can express. And then the whole system is intact. And I think that goes, of course, for the therapeutic settings or what spiritual settings as well,
Earlier, when we were talking about the C-section, you mentioned that some imprints or memories related to the birth canal, and I'm gonna take that and ask you about the 4 matrices that Grof talked about, and why in your perspective and in the work of Grof, were they so important in psychological terms?
Well, that's even if some people has touched upon this, that's one of Grof's big contributions to psychology, really, because in most of psychology you don't even think about that being in the womb or the process of being born is a thing that's imprinted in us, because you think that it's just an embryo, or it's just whatever, and we're not fully formed, and the brain is not fully formed. We can't recollect this. But of course, I say from my experience, we register everything that happens to us, and birth is quite a big thing. So he discovered, and it's not something he just made up in his mind, but he discovered through observation after observation after observation, starting with his LSD therapy back in the days. And then when that was prohibited, he together with Christina Grof invented holotropic breathing, or put it together. And then the same patterns kept re-emerging. And one of those patterns was this basic perinatal matrices. So the first one is when you're in the womb, when you're an aquatic being in the womb, and if everything is all right, it's the perfect circumstances, and you're part of something bigger. So if you go to that BPM 1, you might experience bliss, like cosmic bliss, oceanic bliss, unity, But in some cases, there's been some trouble in paradise. So it might be a mother who was really, really stressed, or being hit by her husband or somebody else, or there were drugs, or there were things there. So then that can become a very, very threatening place.
Yeah.
And then you might have the experience of threat. It's not safe, and like being in a very polluted ocean where there's dangerous creatures and so on, as an image. So, and there might be some episode of threat, like, for instance, in my case, when I was 4 months in my mother's belly, her labor started. So her body was like starting to push me, but there was no opening. And my father and mother was in a summer house, so they had to go a long way to get to the hospital, and then they had to be transported to a hospital in Stockholm, and it was, a lot of complications. And I've actually experienced this, and I checked things with my mother, and it's this what we call BPM2, but to me it happened much too early as well.
Mm-hmm.
But in the BPM2 is when the labor starts and there's no opening. And that's a very claustrophobic experience for the child, because there's no escape, there's no way out, there's nothing to do, and the world is closing in on you, and there's pressure. So luckily in my case, because I'm sitting here, they were able to reverse it. Nowadays, the same condition can be reversed quite easily, but when I was in my mother's womb, they didn't have this, they didn't know fully about this yet. But the BPM2 is this claustrophobic thing. And then if you're born not with C-section, then the BPM3 is the opening and the longest journey of people's lives, moving through the birth canal. And that's a fight. That brings images of war. You can have an experience of you hurting the mother organism, or the mother organism hurts you. It's rage, but it's also power and struggle and being able to push through. And depending on things that can happen there, people can get caught in the umbilical cord around their necks, or they can be born the other way around, or they can get stuck there and need somebody to pull them out with these things that makes your head a bit toppy, and there's so many things. And especially earlier on, there could be a lot of anesthesia, so the baby couldn't stay awake. Nowadays they're more careful with this, So BPM3 is really about fight and struggle, but also about this being able to go through. It can be also euphoric in a way, but a lot of pain and struggle. And then you have BPM4, and that's the opening, the light at the end of the tunnel, And that's also coming out into this new world when you move from being an aquatic being to being a land-living mammal, And also how we receive there and what happens. And, nowadays they know more about leaving the umbilical cord for a while, not cutting it directly, and also putting the baby on the mother's breast straight away. And of course there can be complications, so that's not possible. I was put immediately in an incubator when that happened, and that is also an imprint I have experienced in my deep journeys. And that's a sensation of being all alone all of a sudden. You've heard your mother's heartbeat, you've been part of this organism, and then you, in my case, pull out quite quickly, dramatically, because there was no oxygen for me to breathe anymore. And then put in this incubator, which is a perfect environment in many ways, but you're on your own. And as a newborn baby, you know, if you're on your own, you're doomed. So you can see this in all mammals. All mammals, and most of them are more sufficient when they're born than we are. They have this call for their mother that the mother recognizes, and the mother has a call for them that they recognize. So the connection is everything. So, and these 4 BPMs are, of course, about the birth thing, but you can also see them as symbolic in your life, you know, because there are lots of deaths and rebirth during life, you know. So you can see, just like, you know, to take a simple example, you can see when you're doing a project, you know, you might have this, oh, this great idea, this bliss, you're in the womb, you know, and everything is perfect. And then there might be some challenges there. But then there's this, like, then comes the outside pressure, and you're at this point where you feel like, oh, it's not going to happen, it's not going to work, we've done all this and it still isn't going to work, you know. Then you're in the BPM 2. The walls are closing in, you're not getting out. You don't see an exit, you don't see a way through. And then all of a sudden something is opening and you need to go through it, you need to push through it and maybe struggle or dance or whatever you do to get through it, you know. And then there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and then you like give birth to something. The project or whatever you were doing was born.
Yeah. I was born with the umbilical cord around my neck. So often when I'm doing a project and I'm on that phase where the are constricted, right? I start losing energy. I start losing, like, oh, I don't, giving up, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah. So there's, and what you say is so important because you know this now.
Yeah.
And still it's like, because the first step is awareness. The second step is to be able to work through these things. And it's not like they disappear when you work them through, but instead of being a blockage, they become wisdom. They change from fear to love, so to speak. And of course, in dire straits, in dire situations, we might be triggered again. But then we have this knowledge and we have this ability, if we're really, really brave, to reach out and ask for help. Because we know, you know, oh, this is tricky for me. So when I say no healing happens outside of love, one of the maybe most complex things is to show the same love and respect to yourself. To show the same care to yourself. And ultimately, speaking about being fully incarnated, it's not about you showing yourself anything, it's about you being with yourself. Because to me, if you are at one with yourself, what is flowing is love, you know.
And in the beginning, you asked me what a full incarnation meant for me, and I think you gave a pretty good idea of what it meant for you. And I want to bring that back because I wanted to talk about, because we already said what a full incarnation might be, but how does it, you know, how does it feel like? Because I cannot speak for that. Do you know how does it feel like in your body to be fully incarnated? The sensations, I don't know.
Well, at first, I want to challenge you there, Rita. I'm not gonna drag it out of you, but I think you have moments in your life where you have felt this full incarnation. You know, there's 2 books written about flow, so that's one way of, you know, when you feel this flow, when you feel that you're in the moment, when you feel there's no, you're one with what is. You're one with yourself, and you're one with the surroundings. There's no restrictions in that moment, in that second. It might be just a short fleeting moment, or it might be a longer thing,
Mm-hmm.
So to the best of my knowledge and experience, what it feels to be, because of course what we're striving for, I guess, is to be fully incarnated all the time. And it's a worthwhile goal to have, but I think the most important thing is to know that the full incarnation is not around the corner. It's already here. Because in our being, we're already fully incarnated. It's about bringing the being into the body and into our doing. And that's where we sometimes need to look at what is restricting it,
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many ways to talk about this, like how it feels to be fully incarnated, and it's so many different ways, I think, to experience this. And one thing are these peak experiences. Like I love skiing, and I love skiing off piste, and I had this one experience in Verbier in Switzerland, where I've lost one of my poles prior in the day. I just had a one as a balancing thing, like almost like a canoe thing,
Mm-hmm.
going down the river. And it was really, really steep and really, really deep snow. And I think I lost my goggles as well when I had a crash earlier, in the deep snow, and couldn't find them, where I lost my pole. And then I just went down, and it was like in every turn I was jumping way over the snow, and then I was digging deep into the snow, and the snow kept coming into my face, like coming into my face. Yeah. And it was like I closed my eyes to do it, and it was like I didn't fall. It was like this perfect movement, and I didn't know what's the snow, what's me, where are the skis, what's happening. It was just this perfect motion going down, and I don't know. I have no idea. Was it 1 minute? Was it 5 minutes? 10? Like, and then I went down to the flat part, and I just raised my pole over my head, and I just woo! This scream was just coming out of me. So that's one moment where I felt like the channel is open, I'm truly here.
Yeah.
And other situations like that. But I think the other side of this is to feel fully incarnated in your everyday life. And the difference is, if you would put a coin inside the core of you, and on one side of that coin it says fear and stress, which are the same things, and on the other side it says love and trust. And not love and trust to the outside, but to that my own inner being. So if it's fear and stress, I'm going to like pull together, I'm going to like depress things, I'm going to defend myself, I'm going to be anxious and things like that. If it's love and trust, I will be open and let my being enter my doing. I will be transparent, and I will have contact with, I won't be just open and vulnerable, because I have, the anger, the outward directed power. I have the sadness if I need it to relieve myself of pain. I have my sensuality to be able to find what's pleasurable. I have the joy and the humor to turn things on their head so I don't get stuck in my thoughts. So I have all these abilities, and it's open instead of constricted. And when fear and stress is there, then my adaptations I've done in my life, my patterns that I'm unaware of, they will be activated. So it's not really me coming through. It's like a defensive version of me. It's like automatic patterns. I often call it like there's a defense layer that doesn't let our being out and doesn't let other people into our being. I know that Eckhart Tolle speaks about the pain body, which I think is very good, because it's like another entity working in you, taking over. So are we living as that pain identity, that entity, or are we living as we truly are? And I also believe that there's a possibility of there not being a coin with two sides. There could be like a sun inside here where it says love and trust. And that sun will shine through. And then I'm incarnated. And then when fear and stress comes, because we need fear and stress as warning signals, because otherwise we're dead tomorrow. But then they're like clouds, and the sun is still behind the clouds. And what we need to do is to make it rain, like cry, or we need to have the wind blow the clouds away, and then we use our outward going energy, outward going force, our anger, to move them. You could put like joy and sexuality there as well, but that could also be bypassing. So that's why I mention sadness and anger, So, but to be transparent in that way, and when you meet people where you feel they're so authentic, and it's almost like a light emanating from them.
Yeah.
Then I think that's what's happening,
Why is it the Grof Breathwork? Why is it such a great tool to work on these early wounds?
Because it brings you like down into the deepest layers of your psyche. And it brings you not only, it's not cognitive. There's cognition there, of course, but it's so much deeper than that. So you go through emotions, but also you relate to the energy and the physical body in deep, deep ways, So there's through the breath, you can connect to these. The breath takes you to where you need to go to heal. So there's when Grof pictures this, because he's expanding the psychological maps, he puts like an hourglass, and on top of the hourglass, if you look at an hourglass like a big thing, and then there's a narrow thing in the middle, and then there's a big thing down there. And on the top, that's our ordinary consciousness. And our everyday consciousness. And when you go down into the first big thing before the narrow thing, you go down to the personal unconscious or subconscious. And then when you get to this narrow thing, it's death and rebirth. So then you have the 4 basic perinatal matrices. And then in the thing at the bottom, you open up to the transpersonal experiences and the collective unconscious and like the archetypal domain, all these things. And this hourglass, the same there, it's not written because he thought about it in his working room. It's written because it was a way to describe the experience the experiences people had time and time again with breathwork. So another beautiful part, when you ask me about beautiful parts working with the breathers, as a facilitator or as a sitter, I have been the midwife to many people's births. So they actually physically go through the birth experiences or different parts of the birth experience. And I'm there to help, to give them something to push against, to help them in every way, so they can have this experience and move the energy the way it needs to move. And then in the end of that, and that's another so beautiful moment, you have a newborn there.
That is quite similar, and that is why it is called also psychedelic breathwork, right? Because it opens up the same kinds of experiences that you would encounter using psychedelics, but without the substance, just breathing, right?
And that's why I think it's so important now when we have the psychedelic renaissance, because we need to learn from what we did in the last psychedelic era, both from the benefits and the mistakes. And so breathwork teaches us two important things. One is that we can access these states through our own capacity, through our own breath. They had in the United States, they had, when they did commercials for holotropic breathwork, they used get high on your own supply. And I think that's quite a good thing. And so it's also important to know that, I have great reverence for plant medicine and the plant teachers, but it's also very important to know that we are the medicine as well. So it's not about, it's like sometimes, especially men playing guitars, they talk about different kind of guitars and speakers and effect pedals and so on all day without mentioning the music. And I think that's a waste. So you can get caught up in these other things, and also to think you need something to be who you are. So these are great teachers, but it's like Alan Watts said once, it's like when you receive the message, you can hang up the phone, you don't have to stay on the line. And also, so it's such a good tool in and of itself, and it was used when other ways were prohibited. But even if you're doing it, or if you're also doing plant medicine or something like that, it's such a good tool to learn to maneuver in these realms. And it's also a really good preparation and integration tool. So if I was king of the world, there would be, we would use deep psychological methods. We would use holotropic breathwork as preparation and integration. And we would be really, really careful with preparation and integration. And not just because, it's dangerous, but because to really make use of these important, profound, holy techniques in the best way possible, so we can bring it into our everyday awareness and to shift consciousness so it really affects also the life we're living on the horizontal way, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And you are bringing, you and your colleagues from Grof Legacy Nordic are bringing a workshop to Lisbon that is going to happen during our symposium, with 2 breathwork sessions over 2 days. And you will do a preparation before and an integration after, which was what you were talking about. And could you tell us a little bit more about what you're bringing and what it would be like for someone that has never done it before, what they should expect, how can they prepare?
Yeah. So they do not really need to prepare in a special way. We will have a sort of a medical screening just to make sure that we know everything we need to know, and to be sure that it's safe enough to go there, you know. And there's not many contraindications of not, you know, to breath work. It's like if you have like heart problems, or if you have you know, some very special kind of medicine or something, you might need to look at what is this, and how could it be affected by going through strong emotions, or going through like a lot of breathing and so on. And of course, if you're in a full-blown psychosis, I wouldn't recommend it either. And you know, there needs to be some stability to like, you could call it ego stability. There's a lot of confusion in the different schools about the words, but that you have something to return to, that's an I, you know. But so it's just checking in on that. Is this, and we often say that it's never no to do this, but maybe later, you know. Maybe now is not the right timing, but breath work is really, really safe, and the conditions around this are really safe. And then we will do the introduction, so you don't need to know anything beforehand. If you want to look things up, go ahead, but it's like we will say what's necessary for you to know, and that there's not that much you need to know. The most important thing is the connection between the breather and the sitter. And we will be there, and I have a beautiful team, beautiful colleagues with me, like Ida Falkenberg is the other head facilitator, who has, you know, she's has a lot of experience in this, and also is one of the leading researchers in the psychedelic field in Europe and in Norway, where she's where she lives. And then I have Andrea and Soen with me, 2 beautiful and very good people who are currently on their last year in the Grof Legacy Training, and very, very well equipped to do this. And then for every person lying there, you have a sitter on the side. So it's a really, really, really safe space. One of the safest spaces on planet Earth, if a meteor doesn't hit the building, but that's not very likely. And then it's about, you know, just lying down on the mat, breathing, feeling into the music, and following whatever happens and whatever wants to express, you know. And we make sure we have a little contract before, and we also make sure that it can be expressed in a safe way, without hurting yourself or others, or acting out in some way. But even if you go totally into things, most of the time you have this witness that are conscious with you, you know. And the music will really lead you through the journey, and we're there to help with whatever. And then afterwards, you do a mandala painting. It's just a round circle, and you paint inside or outside the circle, however you want. And you it's just to express something from the journey, or make some, like a memory note of the journey, or something you can express in a picture but not in words. And but you're also allowed to write words on it if you want. And then we have a sharing, and where you can start putting some words to your experience as part of the integration. And then you reverse the roles. And I mean, you know, I'm a bit biased because I'm coming there with this workshop. But if I look at what this has meant for me in my life, I wouldn't miss it for the world, you know, this opportunity.
Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity to work these themes specifically that we are bringing into the symposium. So to close this, is there anything that you want people to carry with them from this conversation, or maybe about the workshop or about what we were talking about? If there's like a message that you would like people to stay with, what would it be?
It would be two things. One is, no true healing happens outside of love. And as I explained earlier, it's not romantic love I'm talking about, although that might be nice as well, but it's about presence and connection and relation. And the other thing is that talking about being fully incarnated is what you're looking for is already there. You are already here, just waiting to be invited into the world. And of course, to do that, we need to move at the speed of trust. Because there's reasons why we haven't let ourselves, or we haven't been welcomed to be fully incarnated. But the time to start shifting what needs to be shifted, so what's already there can be presented and expressed, the time is now.
That's a very touching message. Yeah. Thank you so much, Andreas, for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Thank you.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Thank you. If anyone listening to this podcast wants to register for the Grof Breathwork happening at the EUROTAS 2026 in Lisbon, we will leave the link in the episode description, and you can click and you can fill in the Google form. And places are limited. It's between 14 to 20 participants. And as Andreas said, there will be a screening process because this work is held with real care and intention. And I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation. And I'll see you at the symposium, Andreas.
Yeah, looking forward to see you at the symposium. And I say to everyone, come to the symposium, you know, and experience this and everything else that's there, you know.
Thank you so much for joining us in this episode of Full Incarnations. For more information and to register, please visit our website. Until next time, may you walk gently with your beginnings and fully into your incarnation.